Hello and good morning. This is Martin Morgan, the Marketing Director with Repair Shop Websites, and I thank you for being with me this morning for this webinar. We will be talking about how auto repair shops can build an online presence to crush their competitors. Very excited to talk about this topic. First, want to go over a couple of logistical or housekeeping type things. I do apologize if you hear noises in the background. This is somewhat of a construction area here, or pretty close to me, so I don't think it will be bad, but I do want to mention that first. For many of you, it'll probably be no different from what you experience on a daily basis, or probably even a lot less quiet. But if it does become a little bit disruptive, I do apologize for that. Again, I don't anticipate it, but wanted to mention that. Also, I will be answering questions at the end of the presentation. So if you have a question, please feel free to put that in either the chat box area or in the questions area, and I'll be happy to answer those questions at the end here. I think that covers all of those specific things. Now let's take a look at what the presentation holds for us. So I always like to start with a quick overview of the areas that I'll be covering. And in today's ride, we've got a lot here. So usually this is just 2 or 3 things when I present, but here we've got 8 different bullets. So we'll be looking at online trends. I'll share some info about US smartphone ownership, be talking about Google search results, the search results page, why they appear as they do and what Google is doing there. That'll lead to brief points on pay-per-click ads or Google ads, Google My Business, and then also organic search, which will lead into a bit of a discussion about websites and how to help make sure that your website searches well. And then I'll talk about reputation management and social media before the end, where we'll have the most important thing. So the reason that I'm saving that for the very end is because hopefully it'll help bring all of the other pieces together. And if you walk away with one thing today, I want to make sure that you walk away thinking of the 3 questions that I'll cover from that slide. Okay, so as I mentioned, I want to talk a little bit about US smartphone ownership. And the reason for that is because it's grown so incredibly over the past 6-7 years especially, but even if you just look at the last 5 years, and you can see that on the chart here, at least if you can make out as much as you can. But in 2014, US smartphone ownership among adults was just more than 50%. So every other person or so had a smartphone. And now, and this actually does go to 2019, the early part of this year, as we'll see on the next slide, smartphone ownership in the US among adults is up to 81%. So a big jump there, and that's really changed in some ways how we use the internet or how we think about using the internet. So you can completely disregard the section on the right that talks about home broadband. It just happened to be a part of this slide, but of this graphic, and I wanted to include the graphic because it highlights smartphone. And I should say also that the numbers from the last slide and from this are from a big Pew Research Center study that they did January and February of this year. And Pew really charts this very well. So they're a great source for this type of info. Again, as you look there under smartphone, you see US adults, again at 81%, as we just mentioned. I want to point out some of the highs and lows that go along with that, though. If you look at adults there, 18 to 29, smartphone ownership is 96%. So that's a huge number. If you do business in an area where there is a college, if you have college students as your customers, or if that's an area where you'd like to target, then you want to pay especially close attention to those things that are related to smartphones and the utilization of smartphones to find service businesses like auto repair shops. With that number, 18 to 29-year-olds, again, at 96%. Also, when you look at 65 plus, and we'll sometimes hear this from shops that are doing business in areas with an older population where they feel as if their web presence isn't as important because many of the people there are older and not necessarily technology savvy. But as you see here, 53% of US adults 65 plus own a smartphone, and that's one of the fastest growing demographics as well. So, no longer is it that those folks in that older age group don't use technology. They certainly do, and sometimes even better than those in the middle age groups there. I want to jump down to income. So if you look at that and you see less than $30,000, so if you're doing business in an area where it's where the income is less, perhaps, or on the lower end, then perhaps the smartphone ownership is not likely to be as high, versus the higher end there, 75,000 or more, 95% smartphone ownership there. So that's really high. And it's a little bit similar on the urban, suburban, rural area, where, again, in those rural areas, the ownership of smartphones is 71%, while urban and suburban are higher at 83, but still 71 is not a small number. That's a pretty decent number. So it's not that much lower necessarily than the others. And we're really seeing that we're in a time now where much of this is getting pretty close to the average. So I want to spend a little time looking at this slide. What this slide shows is this is page views on a desktop, on mobile, and on tablet. So that blue line at the top is desktop, green line is mobile, bottom line in purple is tablet. And what this shows you is that the utilization or page views, and this is important because page views, this is somebody going to a browser. It might be Internet Explorer or Chrome or Firefox or some other, Apple Safari. They're going to a browser and they're on the internet in the way that we would traditionally think of somebody utilizing the internet. So what we may have said, they're surfing the net, they're looking at web pages, websites. Still important here that even as smartphone ownership has grown so much, we are kind of at an equilibrium to some extent. You see some small changes, at least in the top two lines, where 48% of page views are coming from desktop. So clearly desktop is still really important from this standpoint, and on the next slide I'll speak to that as well. But still, if you look at it, mobile and tablet page views are higher than desktop when added together, yet at least on most months. That may not have been the case in November 2018, but desktop is still quite important. So here, and on this slide, what this shows is this is the Americans who say they mostly go online using their smartphone. So these are people who use their smartphone to access the web. And as you see here, and we talked about briefly earlier on a couple slides ago, ages 18 to 29, 58% of them say that they are mostly going online using their smartphone. So that's interesting, especially when you compare that to the number of page views that we just saw. Ages 30 to 49, 47%, so almost half of them mostly go online using their smartphone. And importantly, that number has almost doubled over the last 6 years. If you look at 50 to 64, 2013, they were at 6%. Most recently, they're at 27%. So 27% ages 50 to 64 US adults say they mostly go online using their smartphone. So what we're seeing here is that more and more people of all great age groups are utilizing their smartphone as the way that they access the internet. What's really important about this, though, is that if you look at time, US adults spend more time online on a smartphone, and the number is something like 70%. So most of the online time is spent on a smartphone, but the most important piece of that is 90% of smartphone time is in-app. So of the time that people are on their smartphones accessing the internet, 90% of that time is in-app. So they're utilizing apps like Facebook or Spotify, maybe Twitter or Instagram. They're utilizing apps. They're not surfing the web or looking things up on Google as we typically think of, at least for the most part. And nearly half of that time that they spend is in their top app. So whatever their number one app is that they use all the time, almost half of their time on their smartphone online is spent on their top app, and then 90% of in-app time is spent in their top 5 apps. So what happens is that people find those key apps that they use all the time, and when they access the internet through mobile, that's how they're doing it. So it's not the same experience that they would have on a desktop. So the way people utilize desktop and their phone are there's two different approaches to what they do when they're on those two devices, and how they utilize the internet is definitely different. That's not to say that people don't go to a browser and search for things on their phone, because they absolutely do. It's just when you look at that colossal amount of time that people spend on their smartphone on the internet, much of that time is in-app. So I want to spend some time looking at Google search results, because as we talked about, whether it's desktop or mobile, Google owns the vast majority of search traffic. A lot of people, the first thing they do as soon as they get to the internet is they go to Google, or it's automatically their home page, and they type something in, and their search has started. So we've already talked about the most significant development on the user side being the smartphone. It's important to note on the internet side, the most significant development over the past 4 or 5 years are the changes that Google has been implementing on their search engine results page, and what that looks like when you conduct a search. So anytime you type anything into the bar or search and you get that page that shows up, that's the search engine results page, otherwise known as the SERP. And what Google has done is they're working to try to answer more and more users' questions as soon as they type them in. So from a user standpoint, that creates a good experience, because I can just type something in, and sometimes I don't even have to click on anything. The answer or the information I'm looking for is basically on that search engine results page and pops up in various different things that Google has created. Of course, the reason that Google is trying to do that is they're trying to keep you as the user on their properties more often so they can sell more ads. So, let's be clear about that. What they're trying to do is sell more ads. Now, it helps from a user standpoint, us feel good that, wow, they're also answering these questions a lot quicker. But what we've seen as a result of this, and this was an in-depth study that was undertaken in the first quarter of this year by JumpShot, and also put together by SparkToro. So they're analyzing a lot of data to come up with this information. And part of what we see as a result of those answers is that the number of zero-click searches, so when somebody does a search, you get that search engine results page, the number of results where people are not clicking on anything on that search engine results page is nearly 50%. So that's growing, and it's a high number, and a large part of that is because Google is answering questions that people are asking. Now, from those pages, you see here at the top left, paid clicks to non-Google sites. That's basically Google Ads or pay-per-click advertising. From search, only 3.6% of clicks go to that. Organic clicks to Google sites, which is that pink slice of the pie, nearly 6%. Those are clicks on things like YouTube, other things that they have, but mostly YouTube, I would say. And then you see on that left side there, the big blue side, organic clicks to non-Google sites. That's little more than 41%. So you can see that big number there as far as organic search clicks, but that number has gone down in part because of what Google is doing as far as answering the questions. So if we look at what does that mean exactly? What does a no-click search look like? And the important piece of this is that's that nearly 50%. 18% of searches lead to a new search. So right off the bat, you're talking about 18 of that nearly 50% lead to a new search. What that might look like for you or a potential customer is that somebody might, while looking for transmission repair, somebody might just type transmission into the search bar. Now, the results come up, and it's information about the transmission, lots of information about a transmission. It may be some additional information about what to do if you're having some sort of trouble with the your transmission or something of that nature. So that's what that would specifically look like. So that's a new search. And then they see transmission, they go in there and then they type transmission, they add repair, and then they do a new search. So that would be an instance where they would come across a new search. Other things, no-click search. Questions. You might ask a question, the answer pops up right there in those rich snippets at the top. No reason for you to click on anything. You're answered, you're good, you're moving on. Recipes, also similar, may come up right in that snippet. Sometimes you search for baked potato recipe. The information you're looking for might be right there. No reason to click on anything. Definitions of words. A lot of times I'll try to type something up there and I'll get a definition of the word right in the search bar before I even have to start a search. Schedules. We've got NFL coming up soon. College football starts this weekend. Type in something like Los Angeles Rams schedule. It pops right up on that page. No reason to click on anything. Somebody may do a search on desktop and then call on mobile. So they might search for auto repair like I did for the desktop. It comes up. I see a number in the local pack and I just type it into my phone and then call. Time and time zones. What time is it in Tokyo? Type that into your search bar. The answer is going to pop right up. Currency conversion, similarly, and ages and birth dates. How old is Matthew McConaughey? It's going to pop right up in your search engine results page. So that's what no-click searches look like. And when you hear about that, it explains it in a way that helps us all understand as users what that means. It doesn't mean at all that people are no longer looking at organic search or they're not clicking on paid ads or any of that. It's just Google's getting better at answering those easy questions on that page. And a lot of the searches are for easy questions or people just looking for information. So now I want to spend a little bit of time looking at the search engine results pages. So this broken up, obviously I couldn't show it from top to bottom because you wouldn't be able to see anything or that'd take a long time to scroll through and I couldn't put that in the PowerPoint. But this shows auto repair. I searched for auto repair right from my desktop here. These are the results I got. You can see on the left, which was the top. You've got the ads at the top. You've got the map and the local pack just below that. That's what that segment is called, the local pack, where it's got those listings there. You may already know that, but I figured I should mention that. The middle, which was just below the local pack, you can see the organic search results. On the right side, you can see just below the organic search results, interestingly, I got a section that had top stories, and then also people also ask. And then below that, we had more ads. So we had a couple of additional sections in there, which is interesting. Now, when I search for auto repair near me, again, this is from my desktop. You can see the results here. Looks pretty similar on the left, which was the top again. You can see we had the ads, the map, the local pack, organic search results, and then we had some more ads over there. So a simplified version of what I found when I searched for auto repair. In part, what that tells you is Google is saying, okay, if somebody's searching for auto repair near me, chances are pretty good that they're looking for a place to take their car or they've got a problem, car or truck. So we're going to serve them different results. We're not going to worry about these news results or people also ask at that point. Now, when I did it for mobile, and you see the screens are smaller here just because my screen was smaller when I did the search, obviously. Not all that different necessarily. You can see, though, it was just one ad instead of the two that were there before. Then the map and the local pack were there. Then we had our organic search results. And this was auto repair again. And also I did get, again, like I did when I did it on desktop, I've got top stories and then people also ask. So interestingly, it was consistent from desktop to mobile when I searched for auto repair. That's not always the case. Then when I did the mobile search for auto repair near me, you can see again, starts with the one ad. We've got map and local pack. We've got organic search. And then the only place where this showed up they had this section here called interesting finds. So I can't say that I've seen interesting finds much before, if at all, but it popped up here. Looks pretty similar to news, although maybe it's kind of more different types of stories, not so much news. But it did pop up kind of in part of the organic search result. So interesting result there, but that really shows you the main components of what that search engine results page looks like. And now I want to spend some time talking about the major components, the ads, the local pack, and then the organic search. So here, we'll talk about the ads, and you can see I highlighted it from based on this study, 3.6% of clicks went to the paid ads, whether they're at the top or the bottom of that first page or future pages. So this is a graph that shows click-through rates by industry, and you can probably just barely see if you can make it out at all, but that purple one, second from the left, is auto. Now that's a huge category, which I believe includes new cars, dealerships, all of those things as well. So the click-through rate for that is 4%, so a little bit higher than what the previous study showed from that standpoint. This, I think, is always a good visual to look at when you want to compare SEO or like the benefits of a website and SEO effort versus the benefits of pay-per-click. So I want to look first at the right side, which is the benefits of pay-per-click, which is you can get up and running quickly. As quickly as you can create an ad and give your credit card to Google, you know, they're happy to take your money and start serving up your Google ads. So there's a big benefit to that, especially if on the left, where SEO takes a little bit of a longer time to set in. Now, that's especially true if you haven't had a website before, you launch a new website, it's going to take some time. But as you continuously add content, as you refresh content, as you do things like get links, then that's going to grow and the benefits are long lasting. For pay-per-click, the benefits only last as long as you're willing to pay. Now, you could say that you had some benefit that came just from having your name be seen, or if you were doing visual ads or images, you potentially could have a logo up there. And that could certainly be valuable and valid. And what I want to say too, and I would say this no matter what, is if you are doing PPC and that's working for you, then keep using it. I would never tell somebody to stop doing something that is working for them. By all means, if that's working for you, whether you're doing it yourself or you've got somebody who's doing it for you, then please continue to use that. If you're not doing it yet, or if you've just dabbled in it a little bit, I would highly encourage you to find somebody who knows what they're doing, because you can easily lose a lot of money if you're not careful when you first set it up. Make sure, certainly initially, that you set your daily limits, and if you're just getting started, you might want to set them lower than you would like to spend just in case. And I'll share an experience that I had with you as a warning. I do some PPC for us, and I was looking to change our audience, and so I tweaked it, and I tried to be careful and limit it based on a certain group that we would want to target, but I didn't limit it nearly enough, and so in the first 30 seconds of a day, I ended up blowing $200 of our advertising budget, which I would say is well above what our daily advertising budget was, because it's supposed to be 40. But people got served the ads and clicked on them so fast in the first 30 seconds of the day that it was gone. So between midnight and 30 seconds after midnight, before the clock struck 12:01, $200 was gone just like that. So you want to be very careful when you're doing that, and make sure that you're putting those checks in there, and find somebody who really knows what they're doing. And also for PPC, it can be a good short-term step if you're waiting for SEO. So if you're really trying to drive that or hoping to get the business, and you've just launched a new website, or you've got something else happening, that can be helpful. And also can be good for targeting specific audiences. So you can get pretty granular about what types of audiences you target, and if you can really target that can be helpful from that standpoint if you're trying to do something a little bit different. So I want to share this. This is a 2-year study of repair shops, or a small group of repair shops, same company, over 2 years. And to protect the innocent, I won't share the name, but these numbers, while not exact, are rounded, and it shows how this worked for them, or rather maybe didn't work, but there's other benefits, I suppose. So this shop spent $30,000 on Google Ads over 2 years. They had nearly 5,000 clicks, so that sounds good, right? $6 per click isn't too bad, but 5,000 clicks, wow. The problem comes in is that they only had 8 conversions. So they considered a conversion a call or a form fill, people into the shop doing business with them from these clicks. The average sale value, or their average repair order, was $205. So the total sale value, the total revenue they made from these ads directly was $1,640. So they spent $30,000 and they made $1,640. Cost per customer acquisition, they spent $3,750 to make $205 per customer. So this, to me, if you look at that and you say, wow, they spent a lot of money and really didn't get much out of it. They may say that the name recognition appearing at the top of the search results with that ad made them feel good. But what also could potentially be important is if you know what your lifetime customer value is. So let's say they would say, yeah, we only made $205 directly from that first sale, but our lifetime customer value, once we get somebody in, is right about $8,000. So they spent $3,750 per customer acquisition to make $8,000 over the lifetime. That might be some math that you're okay with, depending. But one of the reasons I share this with you is to say be cautious, and the other one is to say make sure to track your numbers as much as you can, because if you can track it and you're spending, let's say you're spending $1,000 a month in ad, but you're getting $5,000 in business, you might feel pretty good about that, and understandably so. That might be really good, especially if you factor in the lifetime value. But consider those numbers and try to keep close track of them. Okay. Making the transition now to Google My Business, and this is one of my favorite subjects because I think it's so important. Every auto repair shop needs to have that Google My Business profile. You need to make sure it's filled out as much as you can. You can see some of the pieces where Google My Business factors in here in that local pack, both on desktop, which is in the left, mobile in the middle. Any of those listings, if somebody clicks on those for you, that is them looking. They're going to get to your Google My Business profile. You look on the right, there's the profile itself. Here's some of the key things of the GMB profile. Location you absolutely have to have. Photos and videos, really important. Make sure you have those. All of that basic information, phone number, location, website, all of those things you want to make sure you have. Description of your business, make sure you've got that good description in there. That's a new thing that they opened up, I think it was a year or so ago, but you can get much more detailed in that description than just your category. So if you're really targeting transmission repair, then you can put that in that description. You've got much more real estate to use in that description to talk about your shop. Reviews, I'm going to touch on that in a few minutes, so I'm not going to jump into it here. Appointment requests, you can either put a direct link to the place where you take appointment requests on your website, or a third-party provider if you have one. You can do messaging directly through GMB, so you can set up your mobile phone so that people can text you through the GMB, which can definitely be valuable. Q&A, you don't have to sit and wait for a potential customer to ask you a question. You can jump right in there and put in your own question. So I'd highly encourage you to go, think of some of the FAQs that you get asked by people, 2 or 3 of them, and just pop them in and put in the answer. Google really likes that. Similarly with posts, you can use that similar to almost like a Facebook post or a Twitter post. Put in information if you've got specials or you did something in the community, you've got a new picture you want to post and give a little commentary on that. Use posts, and all these things show to Google that you are active, and that's going to help you in your Google in the local pack, and it's also going to help you in your organic search. So we did a deep dive on this in our podcast. I think we recorded it last week. But if you'd like to hear more about Google My Business, I highly encourage you go to our website, repairshopwebsites.com. Go to that resources link up there on the top of the menu. That'll show this resource center page. Click on the Busy Bays podcast. You see that bottom right. That'll take you to that page. Scroll down to episode 8. That's all about Google My Business. So we talked about the local pack, and I've got the example of it on the right and what that looks like. I want to share with you some info about what's most important in the local pack. This is a question that we get a lot. How do I get my shop to show up better in the local pack? Well, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, depending on where you are, and this came from the Moz 2018 Local Search Ranking Factor Survey, where they asked some really large number of SEO experts what are they seeing as the most important thing, and asked them to vote on these things. So proximity of address to point of search was number one. So the number one thing that determines if you come up in the local pack is how close are you to the person who's searching. So that certainly happens when it's a super local search or somebody does near me. Physical address in the city of search was number 2, and then proper GMB category associations was number 3. Further adding to the point of how important it is for you to make sure that GMB profile is filled out. And you can see the location here in the search that I did. The first shop that shows up under the ad, 83 feet. Second shop, 0.4 miles. Third shop, 0.7 miles. So it was almost perfectly in proximity. But there are additional things that you can do. So it's not just proximity. And I've showed that here. So other ranking factors, and this is by number. So number 9, domain authority of your website. So your website does play into where you show up in the local pack. Number 10, the completeness of your GMB listing. Number 12, quantity of Google reviews. Number 14 is product or service keywords and reviews, and certainly encourage you to do that if you can with your customers. Encourage them to include the service that you provided them in a review when you ask them. Product, service, keyword, and the GMB landing page. So whatever link you put in there to your website, you want to make sure those service words are on that page. And then high review rating. So 4 to 5 stars is the number 19th factor, again, voted on by SEO experts when it came to local search. Another important thing to mention here is where Google gets references to verify credibility. So Google always wants to verify credibility when it comes to the local pack and when it comes to your Google My Business profile. And as you can see, they use some different places, but when there's a website, they always use a website. That's 99% of that. So this is another example where the website's feeding into the GMB and the GMB is feeding right into the website. So they're an important combination to consider. Organic search results. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about organic search. So that's that 41%, a little more than 41% in that we talked about from this chart. And as you look at it here, that was that middle section, those organic searches. And again, it's a huge piece. So if people, if you hear, oh, well, people don't utilize organic search or they don't click on that, just totally disregard that information because that's not true. And when you factor out things like multiple searches, like we talked about, of the nearly 50%, that was 18%. And you start to look at that, and that number of clicks on organic search shows up as even more important. So what are those key ranking factors when it comes to influencing where you show up in organic search? Number 1, quality and authority of inbound links to domain. And again, this is voted on by SEO experts. Number 2, domain authority of your website. 3, the diversity of inbound links to your domain or to your website. 4, topical keyword relevance of domain content. So that's making sure that you've got all that content on your site that speaks to those things people are searching for. Number 5, mobile-friendly responsive website. Really important, and I'm going to touch on that in a minute. And then number 6 is geographic, whether that be city or neighborhood, keyword relevance of domain content. So that's that content that's on your website. You want to make sure that it references cities, neighborhoods, other local things where you can. Other things that factor in: number 8, click-through rate from search results. So when people get to see your results on the organic search, how often are they clicking? So you can influence that, and you want to build your website to influence that using page titles and descriptions. So you want to make sure you're doing that. Volume of quality content on entire website is number 11. So quality content is definitely important. Number 13, product service keyword and your GMB landing page title. And then also the location keyword in GMB landing page title. So as people are looking for those things, again, that's a place where page title is important. And you want to make sure you're doing the right things when it comes to that. So that leads the 4 keys to a high-performing website. This is a piece I typically include in many of my presentations, and I want to touch on it because as we talked about with the rankings, this definitely influences where you show up on the organic search. Number 1, responsive and mobile design. We just saw that on the list. This is critically important. We've been talking about this for years, but as of last year, Google made it a requirement for search, and now those websites that are not set up as responsive are going to suffer in the search results. So you can see the differences here. This is why Google really likes those that mobile design, that responsive site. So it's easier to use on your phone. We've all searched for something and found that one on the left and pretty much just hit the back button almost immediately because we're looking for the information that we need. Things like the phone numbers, larger text. We've got working hours. When are they open? All of those things make it critically important. Modern SEO. So I updated this a little bit recently because of the importance of local search and what's being factored into local search. So your architecture is still really important. How your site is built, making sure it's built the right way, making sure it's easy to crawl for Google, making sure you're including some of those things that Google is going to look for to put you in the right categories and making sure that you show up in the right searches. Second thing is links. Quality and authority are really important. Where are your links coming from? You've got links to your site. But the other factor, and this is one of the new bullets that I put in here, is local. And we've been saying for a few years now, get as many local links as you can. If you're a member of the chamber, ask them to link to your site. If you're involved in charities or nonprofits, ask if they'll link to your site. If you're supporting something, if you're doing a sponsorship, those things will help a lot, especially when it comes to local search. And then the third key piece is content. We saw that when we were looking at the rankings and the ranking factors, relevance and depth. How much quality content you have matters. What your content is and how that relates to what people are searching for matters. So you want to make sure that you've got those pieces in there because Google loves content and they're just going to eat that up. So the third piece here, 7 seconds or less. I recently changed this from 10 seconds or less just because our attention spans are continuously getting smaller. But you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. So you got to make sure when somebody goes to your site, they see the answers to these questions. Does your shop perform auto repair? Sometimes this is somewhat obvious if you've got auto repair or service or auto service or something like that in your name, but it's not always the case. Are you located nearby? Is your address there? Did they know exactly where you are? Are you easy to contact, either by phone or maybe email or just an appointment request? Can you fix the customer's specific problem? So you want to make it easy for them to find if you do the service that they're looking for. And then is your shop clean and welcoming? And that's where those pictures really come in. And the key part here, one of the key things is also, and this goes beyond a little bit search, but also, what do you want people to do when they get to your site? You want them to contact you, right? You want them to reach out to you. So you make lots of opportunities for that. On the left, we've got a desktop site. On the right is the mobile site. But you want to make sure phone numbers, forms, calls to action, different ways to contact you are all there. So those 4 keys: responsive, mobile, website. You got to make sure your site is that. Modern SEO, 7 seconds or less, and then those calls to action. Let them know what you want them to do when they're there. Reputation management. So this is really important, and it affects how you show up in the local pack and also your website. Much of this is related to reviews. And I know as auto repair shops, you may be on a bunch of different review type platforms. Google is extremely important. And if you're on a different platform and you can feed that into Google, then obviously that's advantageous. And then also, though, you want to make sure that you're responding to the comments that you're getting. So some of that may be, hopefully many of those are positive responses, so you're thanking somebody. And then also, though, if somebody does post a review that's not a good review, you want to make sure that you have a good, solid response to that. Depending on the type of bad review it is, we would advise you to respond in different ways. So I don't want to get too tightly into how to do that. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll have my contact info at the end here. But you want to respond to reviews, and that's true no matter where it is. So if it's on Google or Facebook or some other review platform that you're utilizing, and especially on Google and Facebook, thank people for your reviews. But you want to be aware of what's happening and where your shop name is showing up and what people are saying about you in any areas where that could be happening. Now, that can be a little bit overwhelming, but especially some place like Google, make sure you're focused on that, because a lot of people use that. Something like Facebook, Yelp is also popular when it comes to reviews. So make sure that you're managing your reputation from that standpoint. But it's not only just online, it's offline. And part of reputation management is not only just managing what you have, but also asking for those reviews. So we did a big survey of customers for auto repair, and we asked them, what would make you significantly less likely to visit a shop? You can see on the left here, 27% said bad reviews, 30% said bad reputation. You can almost combine those two together, and you've got nearly 60% are talking about reputation and reviews. So you want to make sure you're doing your part. And part of that is, as you look on the right, asked to leave a review and not asked to leave a review. So we asked them, if you were not asked to leave a review, how likely are you, or how at what percentage roughly did you leave a review of a shop? And only 18% who weren't asked left a review. But then when we turned it around and said, if you were asked to leave a review, what percentage of the time did you? 62% did. So almost 3 times as many people left a review when they were asked than those who didn't. So you have a good customer, ask for that review. You have a good experience. You feel good about a customer experience, customer service. Make sure to ask for that review. I want to talk a little bit about social media, but not too much. Here, you can see the popularity of social media platforms. YouTube at most popular, 73%. Facebook at 69%. And again, this came from the survey from earlier in the year from Pew Research Center. Working down, you've got Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Twitter. Many on the bottom you see have kind of leveled out since 2015, except for Instagram. So that could definitely be a big one and potentially an opportunity. And especially you look here, how many users visited the site on a daily basis, and 74% of Facebook users visited the site at least once a day. That's pretty impressive. Instagram was second at 63. So those are both pretty big. The other thing, and this fits into reputation management that I think is important, and it's one of those things that is quickly trending, is NextDoor. So hopefully you've heard of NextDoor. You may not have, depending on where you're located. Certainly big in cities and suburbs, and I imagine somewhat in rural areas as well. But you can see the growth here in NextDoor, which is almost it's almost like a Facebook, but it's neighborhood based. It was basically nothing in 2012, and now there's 175,000 active neighborhoods in 2018. This may be a good opportunity for you, or it's at least a place where you want to monitor from a reputation management standpoint, and make sure to keep an eye on anything that people may or may not be saying about you, you can also put specials on NextDoor. So it might be an opportunity for you on both of those sides. Okay, so I mentioned this at the beginning, saving the most important thing for last. And if you take anything away from this presentation, and I know it's a long one, I'm hoping that you're going to take this away from it. Because all of those things that I said are all really important and somewhat factors into how you're going to think about marketing and reaching potential customers. But you've got to remember these pieces because they're the questions that really matter. That's why I saved the steak for the end. Number one question, who is your target audience? Spend some time to think about who your target audience is, or maybe you already have done that. Number two, how do they find businesses like yours? Get to know those people. If you've got one of them in your shop, ask them, how did they find you? You may be doing this all the time, and that's awesome because you've got some great data to base your decisions on. If you're not, try to do it as much as you can. And number three, how do they choose? So you can also ask them, all right, how did they find businesses like yours? And then what made them choose your shop? Or ask people that aren't going to your shop, maybe at one of your child's ball games or something, and you've got the chance, or just ask friends or maybe people you don't know. How would you go about finding an auto repair shop? And the reason you want to know all these things is because you want to base your decision on them. So you want to make sure that you are where your target audience is. If you find out that the majority of your target audience only looks, well, they just love Google Ads. Well, sure, then maybe that's the place that you want to be, and it's going to be your best investment. If you find the majority of your audience is on Facebook, well, then that might be a good place for you to really be, or that's how they find businesses like yours. So spend some time asking, thinking about this, and then that's really where you want to place your investment. So this is a quick slide about us, repair shop websites, more than 2,300 repair shop customers, 14 years of experience building and managing websites for repair shops. We're exclusively focused on auto repairs. Zero contracts, which our customers love, zero added cost for customer support, and websites made live in 3 business days. Okay, that takes us to the Q&A. Looking here at questions, I've got a couple of questions here. Number one, what is diversity of inbound links to domain? So what that means is that it's not just, let's say you somehow, it used to be black hat SEO is what they called it, but they would build all these website farms, and then they'd create hundreds of links to a site so that Google would go out and just count the number where it says, oh, they've got hundreds of links to this site. This is a good site. Google, in an effort to try to avoid that, they like to see links coming from different areas, right? So a link may be if you're in a specific program and they've got you on their page, the WD and the program there has a link to your website. Maybe you're part of the local chamber, so you've got a link to your website from there. Maybe you participated in another local effort to build awareness for you and were able to get links from there. So it's having links coming into your site from multiple areas, because then Google says, okay, wait, they've got all these links coming in from multiple places. That they must be a real credible source. So they're going to put you up higher when it comes to the search results. So that was a really good question there. Let's see. I have another question here. Excuse me. Should I be on Instagram? I can think of a few instances, certainly, where Instagram is a great place for a repair shop to be. Speaking to shop late last year, does a lot of like lift kit stuff and wheels and tire stuff, and he's on Instagram all the time, and that's just pulling in his potential customers. It's where they are, it's what they're looking for, and it looks great. So for him, that was a great place to be. If you do some work on reconditioning or classic cars or things like that, that also can be a great place to be. If you're, again, think about your audience. If you've got that younger audience, a lot of them are going to be on Instagram. So that's going to be a really good place to be. So I would always say, think about your audience, think about how well, what types of pictures you have, and it could certainly work for you. Okay, let's see. All right, that's the questions. Okay, here, no, all right, got another question. If I switch who's managing my website, does it affect my search results? It can affect your search results. Certainly, it depends on the quality of the company that's managing the website. So, if you're moving from, well, I would say, if let's say you have a website that has a lot of depth, it's got a lot of content, it's well written, it's relevant, it's got a bunch of references to locations that you're trying to serve, and then you decide that you're moving to a different provider, and they're just going to stand up for you a website that has 5 pages and not nearly as much content, and you were previously mid part of the first page, chances are really good that you're going to drop pretty quickly, because Google is going to go back to see that your website and then say, oh wow, they don't have nearly as much content, they don't have these other things here, this is not the site that it used to be, and then they're going to drop. But the opposite is also true. If you go from a provider who on that 5-page website where you don't have a lot of information, or you have some and maybe it's not just architected as well as it could be, and you move to a provider where that helps you put together all this content and some links and it's built nicely, just like what Google has and what Google is looking for, then certainly you should similarly see a increase in how you search as well. So it definitely does matter, and switching it can affect it, but it can affect it both positively or negatively, and there's different factors that play into that. I think most of the times, if you're going to make a switch, the person that you're going to switch to is going to work closely with you to try to make sure that there's no loss. And I'd be happy to talk to you about that further if there are more specifics to that. Okay, I want to thank all of you for participating in this webinar today. I know it was a long one. It was even longer than I expected, but I hope that you take away from it some really good information. We are also going to post this on our website as a webinar that you'll be able to access later. So we'd love to have you share it and or watch it again. And then you can also may help you from a note-taking standpoint if there's anything you wanted to take notes on or share with other people. My contact information is up on the screen now. I love to help shops as much as possible. So if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to me. Be happy to help you from that standpoint. Thanks again, and hope you have a fantastic day.